Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is a returning guest to the show. He is the Eastern Regional Director for Special Olympics Connecticut, Mark Mercadante. And he wanted me to make sure I emphasize the Italian of it. But first of all, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Sean.
Now give me the proper pronunciation of it.
Mark Mercadante.
Mercadante.
So. A lot of people throw an N in there,
right,
or Mercadante, and I think my parents would be very proud when people can say our name correctly.
All
Mercadante, right. It's like a pasta.
I'll say mostly Mark for the bulk of the show, so
Mark
I don't get in trouble. Special Olympics Connecticut. For those, everybody's heard of Special Olympics, but maybe there's a sort of a mission statement you can give, or basically what it is.
Sure. Special Olympics is a year-round sports program for children and adults with intellectual disabilities. We are in our 45th year. It was founded in 1969 by Eunice Kennedy Shriver, and our minimum age is 8 years old, and we're all the way up in. We have some folks in their 70s that participate. And we're a year-round sports program. I think sometimes people misconceive and think we're a track meet or a bowling competition. We have 24 official sports in Connecticut.
A lot of people think of running.
A lot of people think of running or bowling.
Right.
We do have a lot of bowlers. But we're a four-season, 24-sport organization. Right now we are in our spring program, and it's our biggest season, and we have 6 sports: track and field, aquatics, soccer, gymnastics, cycling, and tennis.
Wow, so spring is the biggest.
Spring.
And those 6 sports, do they go right into the summer? Is that how it works?
Well, generally they start practicing right after our winter games, or in some cases like aquatics, before them. And they start practicing in March. They're required to have 6 to 8 weeks of practice. They submit qualifying scores to us. They attend a regional competition, and from there, they're eligible to go on to state competitions.
So, I asked this of a lot of my guests about how, and you mentioned like when it started, but how was it decided like something like this was necessary back when it did start?
Well, I think the history is Eunice Kennedy Shriver. The Kennedys had a sister, Rosemary, who was born with mental retardation.
Right.
And they felt that up to a certain point, her early teens, she was falling behind the rest of the family as far as activities. Obviously, you think of the Kennedys, you think of a very active family.
Affluent, yeah.
And Eunice Kennedy Shriver and Sarge started camps in the 60s at their home in Maryland, inviting other children with disabilities to the camp. And they kind of discovered and evolved that if these folks were given proper instruction, they could participate in a sports program, whether it's at a low skill level or in some cases at a high skill level. And she gradually put it together, did some research, and in 1968, the first Special Olympic Games were held in Chicago. And it was about 1,500 athletes that participated. And from there, the movement really started going forward because people came back from those games and said, hey, this is something we have to do for the citizens, the children, and the adults in our states and in our communities. So that's how it got started. When I got involved in 1979, I have a cousin with Down syndrome, and I started coaching with her. We only had 7 sports. And every few years, experts would come in, create training guides, because some of our folks could do basketball or run track just like you or I. Others needed some sort of modification and maybe participate at a skill level or at a shorter distance. And that's kind of how Special Olympics has evolved over the last 45 years.
And it's just grown exponentially, really by leaps and bounds. I find Special Olympics to be one of the organizations that does a fantastic job of promoting itself and getting the word out there.
Yes.
Don't you think so?
Yes, it does. We have 2.4 million athletes worldwide. Wow. And that's the one thing I'd like our viewers to realize. We're a global organization. Yes, we train athletes to compete here in Connecticut, but they can advance on to national competitions and then world competitions. We are in the process of selecting our team to go to the USA National Games next June in Princeton, New Jersey. And then we will also be sending a group to the World Special Olympic Summer Games in Los Angeles in 2015.
Do the games get a lot of TV coverage themselves?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. In fact, I think it was the games in 1987 when our World Games were held at Notre Dame. ABC broadcast the opening ceremonies on TV, and I think there was a sudden awareness and increase in interest in Special Olympics. But again, everybody thought it was a track meet. They didn't realize we did figure skating,
all these other sports,
cycling, sailing. So that has been one of the things we want to get across to people is we're year-round, we're more than a couple of sports, and people can come out, watch, get involved, support a Special Olympic program 12 months of the year.
You know, and in Connecticut, it's not that easy to do stuff year-round in this weather, but then there's a lot of indoor facilities that are available.
Yes,
thankfully.
Yes,
right?
it's the weather the last 2 years has hindered us a little bit with some of our outdoor practices, but we managed to get by, and hopefully there'll be no more storms coming through.
If you can get through superstorms and hurricanes and blizzards.
Yes, we had quite a few events postponed and rescheduled because of everything from Irene to Sandy to the big winter storm we had in February. We were able to get them all in, though.
I want to touch on a phrase you used before, mental retardation. And we had your cohort from Rhode Island on taping a show, and it was very interesting. They refer to it now as the R word, and that's where the intellectual disabilities come. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, when we first started, mental retardation was the word to use to describe persons who had an intellectual disability. I would say about 10 years ago, when we started doing forums with athletes, their families, volunteers, and even staff, it became very apparent that that word retard had a very negative connotation.
Right.
There's no way a person could feel good when being labeled with that.
It became a personal insult, and also, and as a result, became politically incorrect.
That's right. But it was also a phrase used in many cases by state institutions.
Right.
And
the
school
Department of Mental Retardation existed as a department, and they changed that name obviously too.
Right. And I think pretty much across the country now, you do no longer see mental retardation used. It is intellectual disabilities. Some states use cognitive delay. We switched about 8-9 years ago, and for our athletes, that was a positive thing. And we now have a campaign to called "End the Word" and stop using the R word campaign, because we don't want people using that in their everyday language. It's not unusual to be in a high school and two friends joking around and one say, "Hey, you retard." And that is a word we just would like to see eliminated from our day-to-day vocabulary, because it does bring up a very negative connotation.
You know it's a bad word when you can't even say the word. When you use the expression, the R word, that means it's flat out a no-no. It's unacceptable in society now.
Yes,
right?
it is. And I think what I see now is sometimes when you hear someone use that word, there's almost that little bit of a pause of, it's almost like a swear word. So
That's absolutely right.
We're getting the word out there. We like to make it 100%, but people are understanding that that is a word that is very insensitive and derogatory.
People don't want to use that word, they know it, but I think if there's one thing that people aren't aware of, it's what the proper verbiage should be in its place. Because like you just said, different places use different verbiage to describe intellectual disabilities or anything along those lines.
Well, we kind of determined that people are people first.
Right.
So we'll say an individual with intellectual disability, almost like an individual with long hair, short hair. It's not what the person is, it is an aspect of that person, but they're a person first.
So let's get a little bit more into specifics as far as Special Olympics Connecticut goes. You're here to get the word out, and again, Special Olympics does a good job. But what should we, as viewers, what should we be learning, and what would you like to focus on today?
Well, I think the fact that we're a year-round sports program, that we are in virtually every community in the state. We have 7,100 athletes with intellectual disabilities. We have 7,400 unified partners, and we'll touch on unified sports in a minute. We have about 1,100 coaches, volunteer coaches.
You're a coach, aren't you?
I was a coach.
Okay.
I'm a
well, you're a bigwig now. So
yeah, but I started off as a coach for 6 years coaching my cousin and her teams in upstate New York.
Which sport was it that you were coaching?
Initially softball,
Okay.
then bowling, then track. And
Every time they added a sport, you'd end up
cross
becoming
country
a
skiing.
coach
sure,
for it. Yeah.
sure. And it's a lot of fun.
It
because
is, yeah.
I had some athletes who were very low skill. My cousin Paula, who was born with Down syndrome, was not necessarily a skilled athlete, but she really enjoyed sports. And we found the appropriate level for her in track and field. She was a soccer skills player, and she really enjoyed it. Bowling, she still bowls to this day. She's in her 50s, she bowls. And so I think that helped make her a better person socially, certainly physically. She lost about 50 pounds, and it gave her experiences that she normally would not have gotten had she not been involved in Special Olympics.
Now, do you find, and I think this is true of anybody who comes on and talks about an organization, a nonprofit, advocating, to help cure a disease, anything along those lines, if you have a personal connection in some way, as you just mentioned, you do, was that the impetus for you to get involved in the first place, even way back when?
Yes, well, I was kind of dragged into it, but yes, we just did not have enough people to coach the athletes. I was asked by some parents, I was in high school, if I would help because I did have an athletic background. And, gradually, and I think initially back in the 70s and even the 80s, the majority of the volunteers were family members, were people that worked in the field. I think now you see people from all, who might work for corporations, hospitals, who work in all ways of life, coming out and serving as a coach, serving as an official, helping out at our competitions, whether it's giving out lunches, handing out awards. So we've seen more and more people get interested in the program, want to be involved in the program, and not necessarily have that initial family contact, but through Special Olympics and through their involvement, make friends. Because in addition to the sports component, we want our athletes to have a social life and to have friends outside of the sports. And that's where our Unified Sports Program has been very beneficial.
In this day and age of social media and technology the way it is, with everything from apps to the internet and everything else, you can be more socially plugged in, and there are more opportunities to get the word out, and you know what I mean?
Sure. We use Facebook, we use Twitter, we have a website, www.soct.org, and we're able to get information out there and also get feedback back about our program. And whether it's a fundraising event, a regional competition, a state competition, the law enforcement torch run, Dream Ride, our Penguin Plunges, one which we did right down the road back in March, we're able to reach out to more people and get them involved in a way that they would like to get involved in our program.
As many ways as possible to get the word out, right? Now, you mentioned the Unified Sports thing. Let's talk about that. What is
Correct.
it?
Well, about 15 years ago, our president and CEO, Bo Doherty, was working in Massachusetts, and he saw the need for our athletes to not only be involved in a sports program, but have friends. And he said, why not take the athlete coach that we currently have and make them teammates on the field? And he went to Eunice. They came up with the concept of unified sports. Initially, some people had some reservations, but once it started taking off, people saw that when you have a team that's 50% Special Olympic athletes, 50% non-disabled peers, that not only was the sports programming improving, but there were friendships in a very natural, normal environment that you and I might do off the field. So our athletes not only had the sports programming benefit, but they had the benefit of friends. And a lot of our athletes can count their unified partners as amongst their best friends.
Yeah, I was going to say a lasting friendship or some kind of relationship. It's not just during the course of the athletic activity that's going on. These friendships and relationships that are forged from playing the sport last much longer into life. Right?
Sure. I was fortunate enough back in the early 90s when I worked in New York to be part of a unified volleyball program. We would practice. I couldn't really compete because I was running the events, but I'm still friends with some of these men and women 20 years later. They're on Facebook, they find me, and when I go home to visit my family in Albany, if I can stop in, I know exactly where they practice on Wednesday nights. They practice pretty much year-round. So it was really nice to stay in touch and connected that way, just like a person would if they played on a high school, college, or even a rec team with friends of theirs.
Yeah, you were talking off the air. You have soccer going on, like up at UConn itself, and
Right.
one of their very nice facilities up there.
Right. We're right now in the process of getting ready for our state soccer qualifier. University of Connecticut has hosted it the last 6 years. It'll be May 4th. We have 36 traditional and unified teams going. And we've been able to engage a student-led committee of about 20, along with our sponsor, PricewaterhouseCoopers. They're working together. They've been meeting weekly now since February. And we'll have about 130 volunteers out for the day at their Depot Field complex, beautiful complex.
Yeah.
And it's really great for our athletes to be able to say, I have an event at UConn. Because let's face it, University of Connecticut is our professional
It's
sport.
the marquee.
It's the marquee sport event. And so, and we've had some of the basketball players come out, we have some of the soccer players come out. So our athletes are looking forward to that.
Yeah, high visibility. Yeah.
Hopefully the weather will hold for us and we won't get any snow or rain. But it's a great thing, and what's really great is it's engaging the students to run the event while we're there supporting the
Actually, it runs so smoothly that you don't really have to be as involved as much, right?
We kind of train them initially, and they all given a task. We define the roles, the goals. We're there to support that day for any troubleshooting, but it's really run by the students.
And they kind of like, freshman, sophomore will come in and kind of they learn the ropes, and then they kind of take over. So
Right.
it's really
There's 2 or 3 students for every position. One is probably a junior, senior. Then there's some underclassmen that are shadowing them. So when that person graduates, they've moved up, and they're also recruiting underneath. And it's really become a model program that other states have asked and inquired, how do we do that? And it's really a testament to University of Connecticut Community Outreach Program that came to us and said, we would like to host someday a Special Olympic event on our campus.
How can you say no to that?
No, you can't.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
When you're talking something as big as Special Olympics Connecticut, or nationally, internationally even, it runs the lifeblood of an organization like this are the volunteers.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
And it's growing all the time, so obviously more volunteers are needed. And like we talked about earlier in the show, once you get a taste of it, once you start doing it, even if like you told about how you kind of initially were dragged into it, once you start doing it, you actually almost like it and you want to come back. And I would imagine there were a lot of returning volunteers.
Sure. Throughout the course of a year, we may have 9,000 to 10,000 volunteers statewide that come out and help out at an event, a one-day event, maybe a 2-day state event. And from there, quite a few of those volunteers will get so enthused by it, they may want to come on board and become a fundraiser, a unified partner, a coach. We can't run our program without coaches. We could raise all the money in the world, but if we don't have coaches coaching the athletes, it's going to be very difficult to run a program. So our coaches play a very vital role in the success of our program, as do our local program coordinators. We have 80 local programs throughout the state. They are the teams in Special Olympics Connecticut, and they're volunteer driven. And they really make the program run at that grassroots level. And without them, it would be very difficult for us to run a program.
Are you always needing volunteers? Do you always ask for and are looking for volunteers? Can you always use more?
We could always use more volunteers. The recent economy, some people have had to go back to work a second job, go back to school. We've lost a couple key volunteers in the last year or so in some of the programs I oversee. And you lose one good key volunteer, there's a hole there, there's a void. So we're always looking to try to bring new people in, and again, bring them up, have an assistant coach step in case the head coach has to step aside.
A coach's aside, does a volunteer need any kind of special skill set? Is there something for everyone to do, whether it be a coach, whether it be answering phones, or anything really?
Well, we try to always get interns to work in our offices to help us with some of our projects. Obviously, if you're a coach, it's good to have
the experience,
a sports
right?
background. Not necessarily. Some sports, such as cycling, alpine skiing, aquatic, sailing, you have to have some level of knowledge and expertise.
Yeah.
We can train someone to do bowling,
right,
to do track and field. all of our coaches and all of our unified partners are required to go through a background check screening. If you're new to the program or if you've been involved, every 3 years you complete out an application. It is sent through a service that we have to pay for background, and for the safety, making sure our athletes are working in a safe environment. You know, the situation that happened down at Penn State is an example of something that really got out of hand. We have taken very strong measures to make sure that the folks coming into our program and that are in our program are the type of people with nothing in their background that would provide any type of potential harm to our athletes.
So we talked about volunteers. Let's talk about fundraising a little bit, because, you know, as a nonprofit, that is a fact of life.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, you mentioned the economy a moment ago. So that's another thing that, you know, in these times you find yourself asking during a recession. I don't know if you feel like we might be coming out of it at this point, but during that time, were people still able and willing to dig into their pockets, their wallets, their purses?
Yes. We obviously saw some revenues go down. We're very fortunate here in Connecticut that we have some great state-level sponsors, Bazzuto's, United Technologies, ESPN.
And that's corporate sponsorships.
These are our corporate sponsorships. But the really great thing is they not only provide the corporate dollars, but they also provide volunteers to help run. We don't come out and say, we just need your money. We also need your employees to come out and help. At our regional level, we have Hoffman Auto and Hoffman Audi, PricewaterhouseCoopers, a sponsor of ours. And they, again, come out, they give us financial dollars to support the events, and their volunteers come out and help and run them. And then we do a lot of special event fundraising.
So even during the tough economic times, were the corporate sponsorships still there for you?
Yes, you know, couple went, maybe couldn't give as much, but our bigger sponsors stayed with us, and that helped us get through the very lean times. We learned how to do more with less.
Yeah, as did everybody.
Yes.
Really. Do you write grants and that sort of
yes,
thing?
we write a lot of foundation grants, community foundation grants. We do get a grant from state DDS, Department of Developmental Services, to help us run programs throughout the state, and that's very helpful to us. We also have individual donors, people that have an interest in Special Olympics, that want to support our program and provide a gift to fund, whether it's a very specific project or general operating.
Yeah, and again, you know, Special Olympics in general is growing all the time. I don't know how many more sports you might be able to add, because you're doing so many now,
Right.
and there's only so many months in the year. You say we're year round. There's only so many months you can get them all in, right?
Well, the last two sports we offered were curling in the winter and flag football.
Flag football.
Flag
okay.
football, and you know, they started with a couple teams, and they're slowly growing. And I think it's a great option to the traditional track and field, bowling, basketball, is to give those experiences to people, so that, you know, I was very fortunate. I did some curling. I grew up in the Adirondacks.
I've never met anybody who actually did curling before. You see it on the Olympics, and then you're like, what do they do with the broom and the ice after you're done?
Yeah, it's a very interesting sport, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a great experience. And, you know, I think the facilities that run curling are, you know, Special Olympics, they come in, they're bending over backwards helping us, because they see new people joining their particular sport.
That's good for them too.
It's
you know
very
what I mean?
good
Because
for
it might be a fringe sport, you know, in the grand scheme of things. But if a big organization like Special Olympics is getting involved with it, that helps them, and, you know, and it helps you too. So, you know, all good things. So, what's in the future? What are you looking forward to?
Well, we have our games coming up. We're in the process of selecting our national team to go to New Jersey, because it's so close. The last two national games were in Nebraska and Iowa. It's kind of hard for some of us to go up there and see it, and, you know, being right here in New Jersey next June, we want to go there. We're out trying to raise more money to support our ever-growing programs, and hopefully we just get some calm weather. the next year or so, so we don't have to
Keep
cancel
rescheduling
and postpone events.
Before we run out of time, I want you to give the website one more time and talk a little bit about what's on the website, because I know obviously there are links there for all your social media, but they can get a list of upcoming events, fundraisers, and things of that
It's
sort.
www.soct.org, SpecialOlympicsConnecticut.org, and there you can get up-to-date information about upcoming events, highlights, pictures of events that have just occurred, whatever fundraising event might be coming up. We also have a Facebook page. You can go to Special Olympics Connecticut on Facebook and like us, and then you'll get updated, daily updates. I was able to, I did a class presentation yesterday at the UConn West Hartford and sent some pictures up there of our global messenger who did the speaking, and people are already commenting and liking it.
Beautiful.
And that's also a way to reach out to people, letting them know if an emergency comes up because of weather. We can get out on Facebook and Twitter, and versus trying to call people or email people, which...
We are out of time.
Great.
So it goes by fast, doesn't it?
Yes,
There's so
it
much
does.
more you'd want to get to, but that's all right. Mark Mercadante.
Thank you very much,
There you
Sean.
go, my friend. He's the Eastern Regional Director for Special Olympics Connecticut. Pleasure having you on the show. And you can watch this show and many others on our YouTube sites. That's our show for today. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. We will see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.